Sādhanā vavatu Sahano bhunaktu Sahaviryam karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The sixth chapter, named Dhyana Yoga or Atma Sanyama Yoga, begins with Dhyana-Yogyatā. Who is the fit one who will succeed in meditation? Who is the one eligible for meditation? So yesterday we were seeing the first verse. So what does Bhagavan say? Bhagavan says, a sannyasi alone will succeed in meditation. Who is a sannyasi? Not the one who has put on the ochre robe, not the one who has taken external sannyas, not the one who has entered into Sannyāsa ashrama, not the one who has given up the responsibilities. He may or may not be a true sannyasi. But what is the definition of a sannyasi? Bhagavan says, Anashritah karma phalam karyam karma yaha karoti. The one who performs his obligatory duties with what attitude? Karma phalam anashritya, not depending on the fruits of his actions. So what does it mean, not depending upon the fruit? So yesterday we were saying, this is nothing but the definition of a karma yogi. Karma yogi performs all actions with what attitude? As a worship of the Lord. All actions are performed as a worship of the Lord. He performs it as a worship of the Lord because he is very well aware that whatever he has obtained from the Supreme Lord. The body, the mind, the intellect, the abilities, the talents, the field of action, the instruments of action, the resources to perform action, everything has been provided by the Lord. Even the very life in this body also has been provided by the Lord. So therefore the Karma Yogi says, let me perform action for the sake of the Lord. This is called Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. So the goal of a Karma Yogi is only one, how to please God. This way when he performs his action, what happens to the mind? The mind becomes very, very pure. So Bhagavan says, only a person who has thus purified the mind, a mind filled with all noble virtues is called a pure mind. A mind filled with noble virtues, such a mind is necessary for meditation, because at the seat of meditation, the only one thing which can trouble you, which can create obstacle in front of you, is your own mind. So therefore, in meditation, a pure mind is absolutely necessary. How to gain this pure mind? It is through Karma Yoga. So this is the Dhyana-Yogyatā, eligibility for meditation. One must have a pure mind, a mind which has been prepared through Karma Yoga. Now Bhagavan gives another verse for eligibility. The very same, eligibility is put forth in a different word, Let us chant the next verse. Yam sannyāsamiti prahuhu yogam tam vidhi pandava nahya sannyasta sankalpaha Yogī bhavati kaścana. Together. Yam sannyāsamiti prahuhu yogam tam vidhi pandava nahya sannyasta sankalpaha Yogī bhavati kaścana. Arjuna, understand what is this sannyas. This sannyas is nothing but yoga. Both are one and the same. Pandava, yam sannyasam iti prahuhu. That which the wise people call as sannyas, tam yogam iti vidhi. Understand that itself to be yoga. Meaning, a sannyasi or a yogi, both are one and the same. Bhagwan, who is a yogi? Bhagwan says, nahi asanyasta sankalpaha yogi bhavati. Yogi also has to renounce something. Why is a yogi called a sannyasi? A yogi is called a sannyasi because yogi also has to give up something. And what is that which has to be given up? Sannyasta sankalpaha. He has to give up sankalpa, which is the same which the sannyasi also has to give up. So, the one who gives up sankalpa is called a sannyasi. Second definition. What is the first definition of a sannyasi? The one who gives up the fruits of his action, as per the first verse. Now, the very same thing has been put forth in a different way. The one who gives up sankalpa is called a sannyasi. Now, this term called sankalpa has to be analyzed. What is this sankalpa? Now, not only in this verse number 2, this word sankalpa comes, it comes in verse number 4 also. See verse number 4. Sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudaha tada uchyate. You will see the very same term called sankalpa in verse number 4. You will see the very same term in verse number 24 also. Sankalpa prabhavan kaman Tyaktva sarvan asheshataha. You will find it in verse number 24 in the very same chapter. So therefore now we have to understand what is this sankalpa. So who is a sannyasi? Sannyasi is the one who gives up sankalpa. Sankalpa sannyasi is a true sannyasi. Now we have to understand this term sankalpa. Every one of us, what is our ultimate goal in life? Happiness? Yes, happiness, peace, joy, contentment. These are the things which we crave for in life, isn't it? Yes. How much happiness do you want? Finite happiness or infinite happiness? All of us want infinite happiness. Happiness is never a burden to us, whereas sorrow is definitely a burden, isn't it? Nobody say, I am burdened with happiness. You may say, I am burdened with sorrow, but you will never say, I am burdened with happiness. So what does it mean? The more and more I become happy, the more and more I enjoy. I feel a sense of light weight. I feel light. I feel comfortable when I am happy, isn't it? So ultimate goal of life is happiness alone. Now naturally, once we have decided that happiness is our goal, naturally the mind will start seeking the sources of happiness. Each and every one of us, we are trying to be happy through different means. What is life? Life is nothing but happiness hunting. Yes or no? Yes. Every one of us, we are doing constantly, every moment, only one thing. What is that? Hunting for happiness. The goal of human life is dukkha nivritti sukha prapti. Sukha prapti means attaining happiness. Dukkha nivritti means removing sorrow. This is what every one of us, not only human beings, including plants, including animals, insects, you take anyone, any living being is busy doing these two things. Dukkha nivritti, sukha prapti. Now naturally we human beings we are intelligent, so we also try to find out what is this happiness, how to gain happiness. And now in our experience, what do we find? Whenever I gain the desired object, I become happy. Yes or no? Yes. Whatever I desire in life, when I get that desired object, now please keep this in mind, when I say object, it can mean a thing, it can mean a being, it can mean a situation. A thing, being or a situation, I will call it as object for the time being. So what do I find in life? What I find is, whenever I get my desired object, I become happy. Right? So therefore, what do I conclude? I conclude that desired object is the source of happiness. Correct? This is my philosophy. What is my philosophy? Desired object is the source of my happiness. So now, what will I do throughout my life in order to be happy? Whatever I desire, I try to get it. As far as a student is concerned, what is his desired object? To get good marks. Correct? To score high. To become first in the class. Desires keep changing as we grow older and older. So as a student, he is convinced that if I get good marks, I will be happy. So what will he do? He will work hard to get that desired object, isn't it? Yes. Because he is convinced happiness is from the object. That object can be gained only through hard work. So I must put forth hard work. Merely working hard will not do. I must plan. I must plan out my work and then work out my plan in order to get the desired object. Now this planning is called kalpana in Sanskrit. Kalpana means imagination. Kalpana means thinking. Kalpana means planning. Kalpana means deliberation. Kalpana means visualization. All these can go with the word kalpana. Kalpana is unavoidable. Why? Because now the object of my happiness lies in the world as an object. Now I want to get that object. In order to get that object, I have to put forth effort. I have to put forth effort intelligently. And intelligently putting forth effort necessarily presupposes intelligent planning. This planning done by the mind is called kalpana. But when you add the prefix sam means samyak. Samyak means very well. This samyak kalpana becomes sankalpa. Getting it? So what is sankalpa? I plan it thoroughly with a firm understanding that if I get this object, I am going to be happy. I am going to be contented. I will need nothing more. My life will be fulfilled. So this sam means he is very much convinced. He is not merely daydreaming or wool gathering. He is convinced that if I get this, I will be happy. So this planning which the mind does in order to get the desired object is called sankalpa. Remember, every one of us, we are doing this sankalpa. As a student, he is having the sankalpa of getting marks. Once he grows up, his sankalpa will be how to get a job with good salary. And then how to get a better partner who will make my life happy. And once I get the partner, how to get one child who will make our life happy. And then a good house, again sankalpa. So this way, the mind is continuously busy forming sankalpa after sankalpa. Yes? There are so many things in this world which can make my life happier, which can add happiness to my life. So therefore, now what is the thing which the mind is doing? Mind is continuously planning. Right? So what is my philosophy now? I am unhappy now, but something of the world, in the world, can make me happy. This is my philosophy. As long as you are having this philosophy, you cannot stop sankalpa from the mind. You cannot stop the mind from planning. Now the question is, such a person, when he sits for meditation, what will he do? Can he stop the mind from sankalpa? Never. What will the mind do? The mind will be extroverted, going towards the world. Why does the mind go towards the world? Because the mind is convinced that the world is the source of my happiness. And the mind will go everywhere, wherever there is happiness. You can't stop that mind. Are you following what I am saying? At the seat of meditation, why does our mind wander? Mind wanders because mind is convinced that my source of happiness is somewhere out. As long as you are convinced that the happiness is outside, you cannot stop the mind from wandering. Now, when such a person, remember, this philosophy that the world is the source of happiness, it is not given by the scriptures. It is not given by the spiritual masters. This philosophy I have made by my own superficial analysis of life's experiences. I find that when I get the desired object, I am happy. I look around, I find that all others are also doing the same thing. So I am convinced. Because others are also doing the same thing. So therefore, I come to this conclusion, world is a source of happiness. Now when such a person comes to a guru, when such a person is exposed to the knowledge of the scriptures, what happens? What does the guru say? The guru tells him, oh my dear fool, you are searching for happiness outside. Happiness is not outside, happiness is your nature. And now the guru explains. Observe what happens. When you have a desire in your mind for a desired object, when you have a desire in the mind, mind is disturbed. Correct? Any desire is a disturbance in the mind. When you are disturbed, the happiness, the infinite joy which is your nature, you are Satchit Ananda Swarupa. The Ananda is already there in you. When the mind is disturbed, you are not able to access that Ananda, experience that bliss. So the mind is disturbed because of a desired object. Now when you get that object, what happens to the mind? When you get the object, the disturbance of the mind is quietened. The disturbance ceases. And when the disturbance ceases, the Ananda, the bliss which is your nature, shines forth. So now tell me, is the happiness because you got the object, or is the happiness because the mind became quiet? Are you able to follow? Why are you happy? Are you happy because you got the object, or are you happy because the mind became quiet? Now if you say, I am happy because I got the object, next thing which you will do is, you will keep on desiring objects and you will keep on hunting for objects. Because objects are the source of happiness. Now the guru corrects him. What is the corrective measure? The guru says, it is not because you got the object, it is because you quietened your mind, because of which you are experiencing happiness. So what is the source of happiness? Quietude of mind is the source of happiness. Happiness you need not procure from the outer world. Happiness is your nature. You have to just quieten the mind and you start experiencing this happiness from within. So what has to be done? Make your understanding about life clear. Let your experiences of the world, let your analysis be perfect in life. Now see the difference. When I wrongly analyze my experience, I consider the happiness to be coming from the outer world. When I rightly analyze, I find the happiness is coming from within. Now what is the difference? Difference is huge. The difference is between a yogi and a bhogī. Who is a bhogī? Bhogī is the one who says happiness is there in the outer world. Let me chase the object, get the object. Now can such a bhogī quieten the mind? Never. His mind is continuously busy. How to get that object? How much effort should I put? What are the shortcuts available? Who are my competitors? What are my obstacles? How to get rid of obstacles? How to get that object in a cheap price? This way, the mind is continuously busy making sankalpa after sankalpa. But what about a yogi who has understood this great truth? What will he do? The moment mind goes and starts forming sankalpa, what will this yogi do? He will stop the sankalpa. He will say, I am unhappy not because I don't have the object. I am unhappy because my mind is disturbed. So what will he do? He will do sankalpa sannyāsa. And instead what will he do? He will try to quieten the mind. This is what a meditator has to do at the seat of meditation. Are you getting the point? He has to renounce sankalpa. Because sankalpa is born out of wrong understanding. Sankalpa is born out of ignorance. Sankalpa is born out of self-ignorance. Ignorance about oneself. The scriptures say, the gurus say, you are Sat Chit Anand. You are immortal. You are infinite. You are all-pervading. You are bliss absolute. Everything, whatever you crave in life, it is already there in you. You are that. It is your nature. Your nature means what? Your nature means you need not procure from outside. Just like the fire need not procure heat from outside, heat is the nature of fire. The sugar need not procure sweetness from outside because sweetness is its nature. In the same way, Ananda is my nature. I need not procure it from outside. In case I am not experiencing Ananda, there can be only one reason, and that reason is mind is disturbed. So if that is the cause of my non-accessibility of Ananda, what should I do? The thing to be done is quieten the mind. This is what the meditator does. We have to be very clear about the fundamentals of life. So here what does Bhagavan say? Who is a sannyasi? Sannyasi is the one who has given up sankalpa. The vain notions, the wrong notions that the world is the source of happiness. So at the seat of meditation, you must be very clear about two things. Number one, there is no happiness in the outer object. Number two, the happiness, the bliss, etc. is my nature. These two things you must be very thorough. Then alone you can withdraw the mind from the world and fix it in the self. How will I know that the worldly objects don't have happiness in them? Analyze. Any worldly object is finite, therefore it can give me only finite happiness. Accepted? Yes. Now what are you searching for? Finite happiness or infinite happiness? Infinite. A finite object can give only finite happiness. Limitation number one. Limitation number two. Any object of the world is always unpredictable. Accepted? You cannot for sure say, I will get it. You cannot say it because the objects are few, desirers are many, competitors are many. So there is no guarantee that you will get it. So when there is a doubt regarding getting the object, what happens to you? You start entertaining fear, anxiety, worry, tension. This becomes your constant companion. Why? Because there is no guarantee that you are going to get it. Isn't it? A student who has written the exam, he is always worried, tensed. A person who has started his business, again he is worried, tensed. Why? There is no guarantee that you will get it. Remember, the object of the world can give you only fear, worry, tension, anxiety, etc. To the extent you are desiring that object, to that extent you will find your worries and anxieties piling up. It will increase. Your worries and anxieties are directly proportional to your desire for the world. This is defect number 2. Defect number 3. Any object of the world is perishable. It will perish someday or the other. There will definitely a time come when either the object will go away from you or you will go away from the object. Someday this separation has to happen. Now, can this separation give you happiness? It's a desired object. When the desired object goes away from you, you experience pain. You experience misery, isn't it? Including relationship. Remember, when I say object, it is thing, being, or situation. A person who depends on the world for happiness, he is there. Misery is always his companion. Object is finite. Object is unpredictable. Object is perishable. Moreover, when you desire an object badly, aren't you becoming a slave of the world? Isn't it? You are a slave of the world. Meaning what? Only if I get this object, I will be happy. Meaning what? You have become a slave. Now, do you want to become a slave or master? Every one of us, we want to become the masters of our life. The one who desires a thing badly becomes a slave of the world, becomes a slave of his mind. Look at these drunkards and chain smokers. How badly they want it. What has happened? They have become a slave of their mind. And thus, they have become a slave of the world. These are all the bondages. These are all the limitations of having the philosophy that world is the source of my happiness. And ultimately, at the time of death, when your mind is filled with a desired object, remember, moksha is impossible. Moksha means liberation. At the time of death, is it possible for him to think of God? Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tameveti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. At the time of death, whatever you think, whatever the mind desires at the time of death, intensely whatever the mind desires, in that direction that person goes. Meaning, the next birth is guaranteed. The next birth is in order to get that desired object. Meaning what? You are tied down to this world in the cycle of birth and death. There is no question of liberation. They are all the causes of bondage. So therefore, now this karma yoga is very clear. The object of the world can give me only pain and misery and bondage. He has made his mind convinced. The mind is now convinced. Such a mind will not entertain sankalpa. The whole discussion is based on this word called sankalpa. The mind will not go there. Why? Pain. Agre amrutopamam pariname vishamiva. In the beginning, it is like nectar, all these worldly pleasures. Pariname, in the end, what is the result? Visham, poison. So when that mind thinks about this, such a mind will not entertain sankalpa. Such a mind is available for you. Such a mind has to be turned within. Anyway, those process we will discuss later. It comes under Dhyana Swarupam. But first of all, the mind has to be with you. The mind should be available. Mind is available when it does sankalpa sannyāsa, giving up sankalpa. Thorough understanding is necessary, otherwise your meditation will go for a toss. What does Bhagavan say here? If you have to succeed in meditation, you have to become a sankalpa sannyasi through right understanding about life. This is the meaning. Now Bhagavan gives in gist the entire sadhana process in one verse. Let us chant verse number 3. Ārurukṣormuneryogam karma karanamuchyate yogarudhasya tasyaiva shamah karanamuchyate. Ārurukṣormuneryogam karma karanamuchyate yogarudhasya tasyaiva shamah karanamuchyate. Yes. Yogam ārurukṣoho munehe. For that muni, for that contemplative person who is yoga ārurukṣoho, one who is desirous of ascending the steed of yoga, one who is desirous of climbing the ladder of yoga, meaning a beginner in spirituality. What is the means? Karanam means. What is the means? Karma karanam uchyate. The means is said to be karma. Here karma means karma yoga. The beginner who desires to be a successful meditator, for such a beginner, meditation is not prescribed. What is prescribed? Karma yoga is prescribed. Let him perform his duties with the attitude of karma yoga as a worship of the Lord. This is the first stage. After having purified the mind, after having prepared the mind, once he becomes yogarudha, one who is established in yoga is called yogarudha. Yogarudhasya tasyaiva. Thus, having purified the mind, once he becomes yogarudha, very well established in yoga, what is the mean? Shamaha karanam uchyate. The means is shama, means is quietening the mind. For the beginner, employing the mind is the means. For the advanced seeker, quietening the mind is the means. So, the entire yoga process, entire spirituality can be divided into two. One is for the beginner, another is for the advanced. Beginner is the one who has no control over the mind. For him, what is prescribed? Karma yoga is prescribed. And once having attained the purity of mind, once he is fit to control his mind, once he is fit to command his mind, once his mind starts obeying him, what is the means? Quietening the mind is the means. Two stages. To understand this, let us take an example. Have you seen this pole vaulter? Olympics, etc. You would have seen it. So what does this pole vaulter do? I hope you know it. So what does he do? Runs with the pole. After having gained sufficient momentum, he fixes the pole. What does he do then? Once the pole is fixed, the pole cannot move, but his momentum is there. What does he do with the momentum? As the momentum comes, the pole starts straightening up. And when the pole starts straightening up, what does he do? He starts climbing the pole. Right? And by the time the pole has become perpendicular to the ground, by that time he must reach the very peak of the pole. And at that time, what does he do? Just leaves the pole, jumps across. Correct? Yoga is also same thing. Two processes are involved. Number one, employing the pole. Number two, dropping the pole. Suppose a person says, anyway I have to drop the pole. Let me drop it in the beginning itself. What will happen? He will remain where he is, isn't it? In the same way, if you are not prepared your mind and you directly go for meditation, the same thing will happen. Sometimes it is called a sleep. If you don't prepare the mind, you will comfortably go to sleep. Definitely you will be refreshed by sleep, But remember, that is not the refreshment of meditation. Correct? So now just observe this phenomenon. This person uses the pole first, employs the pole to go to the heights. Right? He climbs the pole, and once he has reached the highest point, he drops the pole. This pole represents the mind. So what is the first thing to be done? Employing the pole, climbing the pole. What do you mean climbing the pole? Climbing the pole means purification of mind. From tamas, it has to be purified to rajas. From rajas, you have to further take it to sattva. And once the mind becomes absolutely sattvic, such a person becomes fit for meditation. Such a person is able to quieten the mind. He is able to witness the mind. He is able to silence the mind. And when the mind is silenced, you are face to face with the reality. This is the point. So what is the first thing to be done? The tamas aspect of the mind has to be conquered. Tamasic mind is always lazy, is indolent, is sleepy, he has no interest in anything. That is called a tamasic mind. So what is the best thing you can do? What is the best instruction you can give for a tamasic mind? Don't give the instruction of meditation. A tamasic mind cannot meditate. It knows only one thing, how to sleep. So what has to be done? Tamasic mind has to be lifted to rajasic state. How can you do it? It can be done only through activity. No other way. So whenever you find a lazy person, don't advise the advanced meditation techniques. A person who is tamasic is not fit for meditation. What are you supposed to do? So when a tamasic person approaches the Guru, Guru is a person who has seen everything. He has seen tamas also, rajas also, sattva also. He has gone beyond sattva. So the moment he sees that person, he interacts with the person. That is why in olden days, the students are allowed to stay in Gurukula with the teacher. For some time, the student stays with the teacher, and by that time, the Guru has understood what kind of student this is, at which level he is. The Guru grades the student, whether he belongs to tamasic category, rajasic category, or sattvic category. If the student belongs to the tamasic category, what is the kind of advice you must give? You must inject desires into him. My dear, if you want to be happy, earn a lot. Because real happiness is in gaining pleasures of the world. Real happiness is in gaining wealth. Become rich. Work hard. Work hard selfishly. Earn name, earn fame. This is the way to happiness. This is what the Guru will tell a tamasic fellow. Because that is the only language he understands. But now after becoming selfish, so the tamasic person has to be advised how to become selfishly active. Now once he becomes selfishly active, a time comes when he has everything in life, but there is no peace of mind. A time comes when he finds that the life is hollow. He has everything, his children are well settled, bank balance plenty are there, but there is no peace of mind. At that time, the next advice given is, be selflessly active. A tamasic person, what is the advice to be given? Be selfishly active, so that he will come out of his tamas. An active person is far better than a lazy person. A selfishly active person is far better than a lazy person. So the advice given is, be selfishly active. But a stage comes when he is miserable, when he has everything in life and he understands that there is no happiness in the outer world. At that time, the next advice given is, be selflessly active. What happens when a person becomes selflessly active, serving others? What happens? The mind becomes purer and purer. Selfless activity purifies your mind. And when the mind becomes pure, such a mind starts asking pertinent questions regarding life. Who am I? Where have I come from? People are dying continuously in front of my eyes. A day will come when I will also die. What is life? Such a purified mind alone can ask these questions. Who am I? Where have I come from? What is God? What is this world? What is the purpose of life? These questions starts bothering a person who has got his mind pure. And such a person alone will value scriptures. Such a person alone will value satsang. Because in satsang, you start getting the answers for your questions. In satsang alone you will get it. In scriptures alone you will get the answers to these questions. And there the Guru tells him, my dear, your purpose is to know yourself. Your purpose is to be liberated from this world. And this can be done only when you know yourself. All your suffering is because you don't know who you are. You are Satchidananda Swarupa, but you think you are this finite limited body. This is the cause of all sorrow and misery. So therefore what you have to do, get rid of this self-ignorance, gain self-knowledge. Once this person gains this knowledge, remember, he has reached the stage of selflessly active. That person further puts for action in a karma yoga spirit, purifies the mind, and then becomes fit for meditation. And in meditation, he realizes the truth. So see how the tamasic person graduates to become a rajasic person. How the rajasic person graduates to become a sattvic person. And how that sattvic person realizes the truth. So now here Bhagavan says, Arurukshor muner yogam karma karanam uchyate. For a beginner in spirituality, the means is purification of mind through karma. Through karma means through karma yoga. And once the mind has been pure, then you go to the next stage. There, what is the means? Shamaha, quietening the mind. Because if you have to quieten the mind has to be pure. Only a pure mind can be quietened. You cannot quieten an impure mind. It is impossible. A person with an impure mind knows only one quietude, the quietude of sleep. At will, he cannot quieten the mind. If you want to quieten the mind, the necessary condition is the mind has to be pure. Once you have purified the mind, you can quieten it at the seat of meditation. Now Bhagavan, tell me one thing. How will I know whether I am fit for meditation? Whether I belong to the beginner category or I belong to the advanced category? How will I know? Bhagavan says it is very easy. Let us chant the next verse. Yada hinendriyartheshu na karmasvanushajjate sarva sankalpa sannyāsi yogarudhastadochyate yada hinendriyartheshu na karmasvanushajjate sarva sankalpa sannyāsi yogarudhastadochyate. Yes. How will I know whether I am a yogarudha or arurukshu? How will I know whether I am the advanced seeker or a beginner? Bhagavan gives a test. This test you can perform at the seat of your meditation. What is the test? Yada, when na sajjate, anushajjate, when your mind is not attached. In what? Indriya artheshu, in the objects of the senses. Na karmasu, in your actions or the results of your action. if your mind is not attached to the pleasures of the world, if your mind is not attached to the objects of the world, Bhagavan says such a person is a sarva sankalpa sannyasi, meaning there is no sankalpa in his mind at all. There is no desire for the world at all. Such a person, yogarudha tada uchyate. Such a person is called yogarudha. So what is the test? Test is simple. Ask yourself, is your mind wandering in the world of objects? This is the test. Litmus test. You don't have to depend on any physician or doctor or a third person. Early morning, get up, sit down, watch the condition of your mind. To what extent are you able to handle your mind? Are you being handled by your mind? Or are you handling the mind? This is the question. Mind is going all over and you are not even aware that mind is going all over. Then understand you are in the beginner category. But suppose you are alert. You know the mind is going there and you have the strength to withdraw the mind from those objects of the world. If you have that ability, Bhagavan says you are fit for meditation. You are fit because you have sufficient purity. Since you have sufficient purity, you can handle the mind. You can withdraw the mind from the world. Do you have this strength? Do you have this purity is the question. Even when the mind goes out, you must have the strength to withdraw the mind from the world. This comes out of maturity. This comes out of sadhana. And this sadhana gives you a kind of strength, inner strength. In our case, what happens? We are not even aware that the mind is going outside. Forget about controlling. Our condition is, we are not even aware. Isn't it? Not only that you have to be aware, you have to stand apart from the mind, witness the mind and bring back the mind. This strength if you have, you are a pakka sannyasi. Because you are a sarva sankalpa sannyasi. So therefore from all this discussion, one thing is sure. What is the most important thing? Purification of mind. Now comes two very important verses where Bhagavan speaks about Bahiranga Sadhana. What are the general preparation you have to do to see that your mind is pure? Let us chant verse number 5 and 6. Uddharedātmanātmānam nātmānamavasādayet Atmaiva hyatmano bandhuh Atmaiva ripuratmanah Bandhuratmatmanastasya Yenatmaivatmana jitah Anatmanastu shatrutve Vartetatmaiva shatruvat. Together. Uddharedātmanātmānam nātmānamavasādayet Atmaiva hyatmano bandhuh Atmaiva ripuratmanah Bandhuratmatmanastasya Yenatmaivatmana jitah Anatmanastu shatrutve Vartetatmaiva shatruvat. What does Bhagavan say? Uddhared atmana. By Atma, lift yourself. Atmanam. lift Atma by Atma. This is the meaning. Uddharet Atmana Atmanam. Lift Atma by Atma. Na Atmanam avasadayet. Let not the Atma fall down. Atmaiva hyatmano bandhuhu. Atma is Atma's bandhu. Atma is Atma's shatru. What did you understand? Here is where we need the commentaries of great masters like Bhagavan Shankaracharya. Because everything is Atma here. Now you have to understand which Atma means what. If you take a dictionary, Atma is Atma. So in Bhagavad Gita, in some places Atma means body. In some places Atma means senses, sense organs. In some places Atma means the mind. In some places Atma means Paramatma. In some places Atma means Jivatma. So many meanings can be there for Atma. So here is a typical verse where it is filled with Atma and you don't know which Atma is what. So here what does Bhagavan say? Uddharet. Lift yourself. Atmanam. Atmanam means yourself. Yourself means Jivatma. Lift yourself by yourself. And once after having lifted yourself by yourself, may not you fall down after having lifted up. Because Atma eva hi Atmanaha bandhuhu. Atma itself is your bandhu. Here Atma means mind. Your own mind is your friend. Your own mind is your enemy. Uplift your mind. Purify your mind. So that this mind becomes meditation worthy. This is the meaning. Uddharet. Uddharet here means purify. Because at the seat of meditation, the most important thing is your mind. All your attention, let it go to the mind. Purify the mind in in your day-to-day transactions. Let not the mind get polluted. When you are interacting with the world, there is a possibility that the mind may get polluted by anger, by greed, by jealousy, by lust, by arrogance, etc. See to it that your mind remains pure, so that at the seat of meditation also you carry this purity, you carry this quietude of mind, so that at the seat of meditation the flight becomes easy, smooth and effortless. If you don't purify your mind, what will happen? That very same mind will become your greatest enemy. If you purify the mind, that very same mind will be your greatest friend. Because at the seat of meditation, you are obstructed by your mind. As far as you are concerned, you can be face to face with the truth if the mind recedes. But if the mind is impure, that very same mind will become an obstruction. Thereby, you will not be able to experience that highest reality, which is you yourself. The purpose of meditation is to know myself as Satchidananda. This knowledge will not take place if the mind is impure. It will act as an enemy. Remember, your enemy is not outside, your enemy is your own mind. Now we'll have to spend some time here. What do you mean by a pure mind? A pure mind is a mind which entertains noble thoughts. Simple definition. What is a mind? Mind is nothing but flow of thoughts. What is a pure mind? Pure mind is nothing but flow of pure thoughts, good thoughts. So therefore, what should be an impure mind? Flow of impure thoughts is an impure mind. Now, whenever you entertain a negative thought, you will have a disturbed state of mind. It's a fact. remember, these are all laws. As far as a law is concerned, remember, you can't change laws, you can obey or disobey the laws. There is no freedom given to change. It's a law. What is a law? If you entertain an impure thought, negative thought, your mind will be disturbed. If you entertain a positive thought, your mind will remain cheerful, happy. Yes or no? Yes. Now, what is the greatest responsibility of a meditator, of a sadhaka? To keep the mind pure. How to keep the mind pure? Every situation in life expects you to respond. But suppose you negatively react to a situation, your mind becomes polluted. Moment to moment, we are asked to respond to this world. You have a choice. Either you can negatively react or positively respond. This is the choice given to you. Situations you can't avoid. People you can't avoid. Things and beings of this world you can't avoid. Situations you can't avoid. But yes, one choice is given to you. What is the choice? How to respond. If you are very careful regarding your response in life, making sure that your response is always positive, once you make it a habit to respond positively to every situation, you will have a cheerful, peaceful mind throughout the day. This is Bahiranga Sādhanā. Bahiranga Sādhanā means throughout the day, what is the precaution to be taken so that your meditation will be successful. We are not talking of Antaranga Sādhanā. What is Antaranga Sādhanā? At the seat of meditation, what the preparation you have to do? That is Antaranga. We are not talking of Antaranga, we are talking of Bahiranga Sādhanā. So here is a clue given. All your life, moment to moment, see to it that your response is positive. See to it that the purity of your mind is protected. And this can be done when you consciously entertain thoughts which are positive and consciously eliminate thoughts which are negative. And remember one thing, any thought consciously, continuously, persistently, consistently, repeatedly entertained, that becomes your nature. This is a law. Any thought, negative or positive, whatever you consistently entertain, that becomes your nature. Meaning what? If you consistently become irritating nature becomes your personality. If you consistently invoke anger, angry nature becomes your personality. If you consistently entertain love, compassion, etc., that cheerful personality becomes your character. Getting it? This is a simple law. Very simple law. What your thoughts are, so will you become. Good or bad. Your thoughts will decide your personality. As that famous saying goes, beware of your thoughts because they become your words. Beware of your words because they become your actions. Beware of your actions because they become your habits. Beware of your habit because they determine your character, your personality, and ultimately your destiny. Everything starts from thoughts. Now here Bhagavan says, take care of your thoughts. Lot of alertness is needed. Suppose there is a person who irritates you. You don't like that person at all. The moment you see that person, you boil with anger. Right? Now tell me, who is the sufferer? You are the sufferer. You will say, it is because of him that I am disturbed. No! It is not because of him that you are disturbed. It is because of your negative thoughts that you are disturbed. Make this understanding clear. That person has only triggered a negative thought pattern in you. That's all. But you are disturbed not because of him. You are disturbed because of your uncontrolled thoughts of anger. Now choice is yours. Do you want to continue with the same thought pattern or do you want to change it? Now here comes alert living, conscious living. A wise man, what will he do? The moment he finds that some kind of irritation is there because of this person, because different kinds of people we meet in life, there are negative people also, there are vulgar people also, right? There are pessimistic people also. Naturally, when you come across such people, your mind is disturbed. But a spiritual seeker is the one who will not blame that person, who will make use of the opportunity. He makes the opportunity a blessing in disguise. The moment he finds that the mind is disturbed, a disturbed mind necessarily is entertaining a negative thought. So what he does, he just replaces the negative thought with the positive thoughts. These are the 5 points to be remembered. Number 1, observe. Number 2, detect. Number 3, eliminate. Number 4, substitute. Number 5, strengthen. These are the 5 things which a seeker has to master. Number 1, observe. First be aware that something negative is going through your mind. Observe. Detect. Detect that negativity. Unless you observe your mind, how can you detect? And as long as you are extroverted, you can never detect. You can never observe. For observing, you have to be introverted, looking within. A part of your mind should always look itself. What is going through in my mind? What kind of thoughts am I entertaining? He must always go through. Take a review of what is going through in the mental factory. What kind of thoughts am I entertaining? Good, bad, indifferent, noble, ignoble. And once you have detected something negative, remember, each will have different negatives. Some may be troubled by anger. Some may be troubled by jealousy. Some others may be troubled by lust. Some may be troubled by greed. Different people have different weaknesses. You will have to find out what is the kind of weakness which you are suffering from. Detect. And then what you are supposed to do? Eliminate and substitute. Substitute the negative thought with the positive thoughts, with the right thinking. Eliminate the negative thinking, substitute it with positive thinking. And this positive thinking, you get it from the scriptures. From the scriptures, you know what is the right way of thinking. Remember one thing, if your mind is disturbed, your thinking is wrong. Full stop. Take that responsibility unto yourself. If I am disturbed, I am wrong. My thinking is wrong. If I am at peace, I am right. This is the way you must think. So if somebody is creating disturbance in you, don't blame that person, because we are experts in blaming others for our weakness. If I am disturbed because of some situation, some person, let me understand I am the weak person. I have to correct myself. It is something like if I have a wound, wherever I touch it, it starts paining. If I say, it is because of the door that I am in pain. It is because of the window that I am in pain. It is because of you touched me, therefore I am in pain. No. The wound is here. So what am I supposed to do? I must heal this wound. Isn't it? In the same way, if the world is triggering negative responses from me, negative reactions from me, I am the one to be corrected. Let it be very clear. In this world, I am here to improve myself, not to improve the world. If you want to improve the world, the best is you start with yourself. Improve yourself and automatically you will find others improving around you. But if you start the other way, let me improve others, it is an impossibility. Forget about it. I will improve my husband, then everything will be fine. No. I will improve my wife, my children. It is asking for the impossible. Start from yourself. Spirituality always points fingers at you. That is why so many Atmas are given here. Atma means you. You are the one to be changed. Don't daydream of changing the world. You change, that is enough. The world, Bhagavan is there to take care. Right? So what is this uddharet? Uddharet means observe, detect the weaknesses, eliminate the weaknesses, whatever be the kind. For example, suppose you are jealous of a person. Let us take one example. Now, is jealousy a very nice feeling or a bad feeling? It's a very painful feeling, right? When you are jealous. Now, analyze the situation. Now that I am jealous, I am disturbed. Who has to be blamed? I have to be blamed. Now, when does jealousy arise? Jealousy can arise only when two conditions are satisfied. Number one, you badly need something. Number two, somebody has that thing more than what you have. Then the reaction which comes is called jealousy. Yes or no? A businessman cannot be jealous of a scholar. Impossible. A businessman can be jealous of another businessman. Because both of them look for money. Yes or no? Yes. Analyze. Now this is called right thinking. Somebody has more than what I have, which I value. Then comes jealousy. Now if he is able to think spiritually, what happens? Whatever I have is gift from God. Whatever he has also is gift from God. Whatever we have is ultimately his gift. We don't have anything. If this thought is entertained, will you have jealousy? Impossible. Now see, what have you done? You have converted that situation as an opportunity to think rightly. This is called uddharet. Develop right thinking. Let every situation be an opportunity for you to develop this right thinking. We have given the example of jealousy. It can be of anger also. A person comes and you are boiling with anger. Understand, he is not to be blamed. It is your weakness. You are thinking something negative of him. That is why you are angry. Suppose you start focusing upon his positive virtues. Suppose you start thinking of how much this person has helped me in life. Start focusing only on those positive things. Suddenly you will find the anger disappears. You start thinking that we are all children of God. We all have our weaknesses. We all have come here to overcome our weaknesses, grow out of our weaknesses. We are all children of the Lord. This way when you think, suddenly this anger converts itself into compassion. It converts itself into forgiveness. Now see what is happening to your mind. That impure mind has become pure. Isn't it? This way, this meditator has to live every day, moment to moment, consciously. Consciously he has to take every situation, every emotion, handle it, purify it, modify it. And then slowly what happens? This positive nature of the mind becomes his habit. It becomes effortless. It becomes natural. So even when a negative, tragic situation comes, automatically that mind comes up with positive response. Noble emotions. It automatically comes. Why does it come automatically? That is how he has trained throughout his life. So many years he has trained in a particular thought. That particular noble thought becomes his character, becomes his personality. All these great saints and sages, we find this. Even when they were tortured, persecuted, harmed, injured, they never tried to retaliate. They always were able to forgive those people, isn't it? Such a mind is necessary for a meditator. Once you have such a pure mind, Bhagavan says, such a mind becomes your greatest friend. That mind will do anything you ask. That mind will be fully tamed. And such a tamed mind is necessary for meditation. 2 minutes we will sit in silence. Just observe what all sankalpas come into your mind. Just watch. Om सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ